Havoks Gaming Den. Step on in, let the legend begin. Woo!
Doors open, come on in. We're back in Havoks Gaming Den. This is Havok LionHeart. Pull up a chair and roll initiative. Games aren't just pixels and dice. They're boot camp for your brain. Straight up training for the chaos we live in every day. Traffic pileups turning into war zones, tech glitches locking you out, shady deals going south in boardrooms or back alleys. D20 Modern throws you into that grid. D&D rules meet real-world ops. Pistols over swords. Squad sync over solo heroics. Car chases instead of dragon flights. Magic into the shadows. Hackers summoning spirits. FBI raids on cults. Every failed drive check. Every botched bluff. It's wiring you for crises that hit closer to home than any fantasy lair. Tonight, RPG Month rolls on. D20 Modern. Wizards of the Coast 2002 Gut Punch. D&D rules in our world. Guns, cars, hackers, conspiracies, magic bleeding into cities, spies, zombies, FBI raids. What is this game actually putting into us? Is it building us up or breaking us down? And is it the kind of person we want to become? Joining me, my wife, one of my favorite DMs ever. She has run killer D20 Modern campaigns, some of which have a zombie flair.
Maybe a few.
So, please introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Lady Lionheart, known in the gaming community as Mama D. I have been known as everything from the Friendly Tauren back in the World of Warcraft days to a D20 Modern campaign, and just about the only one I know that still runs it, because, I mean, it is a 20-year-old gaming system.
Yeah. 24 years. So, stick with us. We're going deep, we're going real, and we're not pulling punches. Let's roll initiative. Look, games aren't neutral. They never have been, never will be. I will continue saying this probably every single episode until it drills home to everybody. Go back. Street toughs in alleys flipping knives for quick draw reps. Gangs mapping turf wars on napkins. Neighborhood kids running recon on rivals to build unbreakable crews. Today's slot, shooters have got you in God mode frags, respawn cheats. Grinds have you in pay-to-win isolation. Esports have you with lone wolf betrayals. Then enter D20 Modern, the equalizer, if you will. A D&D engine, 0 levels of BS. You start mortal, 9mm sidearm, beat-up SUV, a crew of flawed operators, No fireballs unless you got Molotovs, flashbangs, and bribes. Urban Arcana weaves subtle mojo, tattoos that glitch cams, not meteor swarms. DM drops a heist gone hot, vault lasers, double-crossing fixer, ticking bomb. Your superpower? Syncing with the hacker while the driver peels out. The unique edge is it forges street-level heroes from regular Joes. Trains reliance on squad smarts over solo OP builds. Perfect for real-life team ops in crisis. Mama D, how did your campaigns turn randos into tight-knit ops teams?
Well, I mean, the first thing you got to understand about this system is it is not that different from D&D. Even if you've never played it, if you're familiar with 3.5 D&D, you're familiar with how this works. But unlike the way that D&D classes are built, D20 Modern keeps it really, really simple. And so each character is essentially based around a single ability score. His name's like the fast hero. It's built around a single skill set. It's meant to do a specific job. So, just like with any party, you've got a blend of skill sets, a blend of abilities. And as soon as you start to see everything in those kind of stereotypes, it lets you start to begin weaving things together for people and seeing how they interplay with one another.
I like it. It's modern era teamwork training gamified.
That's one way of looking at it, yeah.
And so one of the things that D20 Modern will teach us in this particular aspect is teamwork, using each individual to their best particular aspects. Because, like she said, there's a strong hero, a fast hero, a tough hero, so on and so forth for each of the 6 ability scores. So you don't want your tough hero trying to race the motorcycle. That's your fast hero's job. You don't want the dedicated hero to be the one trying to break down the door. That's your strong hero. Well, in real life, we are that exact same way. We each have our strengths and weaknesses in real life, and it doesn't make sense to try to put yourself or someone else that's trying to work with you in a position where they're having to push against their weakness. That's a path for failure.
One of the interesting things that you see happen in a D20 Modern game is, like I was saying, yes, you can cross class like you can in many other tabletop systems, but watching them choose a character class that is diametrically opposed to their IRL, what class that they would fall into, and watching the two overlap and them trying to work against their nature, essentially. It's very growth provoking.
I can see it. Before we step a bit further into anything, I want to get your opinion on this particular aspect when it comes to D20 Modern.
Okay.
Arcana or no?
Oh, that's a tough question. So I've ran 1 or 2 non-Arcana games in the very beginning when us and all of our friends were learning the system. And it was great, but I'm not gonna lie, World of Darkness was better, and it was better because it had that Arcana supernatural element. That said, when I run D20 these days, I prefer to start no Arcana and then something dramatic changes the world my players live in. So they're essentially having to learn the rules of the world, meta and in-game.
Okay. I like it. Emerging magic, not developed magic.
Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, the game that I'm currently running, you know, I don't know what all you've disclosed on this show, but we have a rather large gaming family around Lionheart Keep, as it were. And so we ran a game where they were literally a family, and they woke up on Dad's birthday, and boom, the zombie apocalypse started. And they ran it from moment one, incident one. And they are about a week and a half in, about a year in, but the grind is really starting. Like the deck is starting to stack against them. Things are starting to actually make them think and react. And humor is even a fun thing to throw into all of this. I mean, I attacked one of my fake son-in-laws with a zombie crow. And so watching them beat it to death with a shovel was absolutely hysterical. But it's stuff like that where it works on their critical thinking. I mean, there's a million different things that D20 Modern gives you access to, but as soon as you take it into the fantastical, you change the rules. You essentially give them power-ups.
Yes. And for me, one of the things that I like to see in this is the development of some of the social aspects. Like, there are people that won't deal with much in their day-to-day life until they deal with stuff in gaming, and then they'll have the strength to deal with it in real life. So I love seeing the people that are, I guess, risk averse might be a nice way to put it.
Oh, absolutely. One of my teenage players, he is the most IRL risk averse person I've ever met. I mean, this kid never learned to ride a bike because he was afraid of falling off it. So watching him pick up a machine gun and essentially dive into a zombie horde or rush in like a bat you know what, not knowing what's going on in the scene, but he just wants to help and be the hero. I mean, that stuff is absolutely eye-opening and hysterical.
Mm-hmm. So, moving forward, is your gaming feed turning you trigger happy, or can you allow D20 Modern to make you the guy who scans exits first? Eyes open, it's building you session by session. Own it. For good or bad, the games we play, the choices we make, develop who we become, and the development of our character is all important. So, here is the meat of what we have come up with for tonight. 7 core ways D20 Modern rewires you. Modern grit, real bleed from ops to life. Feel free to jump in anywhere along the way as we go down this list. Tactical ops mastery. Using grid fights, quick chaos calls, vehicle drifts, scanning for threats, making fast decisions, or having something bad happen. Example, flanking warehouse gangsters turns into dodging coworker backstabs. Botched pursuit alley blocks saves your butt in rush hour pileups.
Okay, so what you're really talking about here, and let's understand this from a gaming perspective, is this is when the dice screw you. If you've got a good DM, they're going to roll lots of random chance encounters and things that occur during the course of a D20 Modern game. Because let's be real, what is Murphy's Law? Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And so when we're talking about these tactical ops skills, these are developed in those moments when everything went wrong.
Yeah, and see, for me, everything can kind of sort of be subcategorized, or everything can be categorized into one of a handful of different skills. This is really, really, to me, it really jumps out that this is pattern recognition. But for me, tactics and strategy is nothing more than pattern recognition, recognizing what has been. So for those that have watched like a whole bunch of like urban action movies where you've got like Seagal or Van Damme or Stallone or Schwarzenegger busting into a warehouse and taking out the drug dealers or the terrorists or the whatever and all that kind of stuff. Well, after you've seen a half dozen of those, then you're sitting at the table, or if you're sitting at the table and you've ran through this scenario a half dozen times, then you see that pattern. You see how all these different things can move to create this sort of scenario.
But that's the catch. That's where the sheet catches up to you in real life, because what the player knows, the character doesn't necessarily know. You have to make those chance rolls to see if the character comes to the same conclusion that you did as the player.
Right. But in this case, we're talking about the bleed aspect. So the point that I'm trying to get at is all of those encounters of watching and hearing from the DM all these different ways, these different moving pieces come together. You see these patterns. And then when you move into your real life, it's like, wait a second. The secretary down at the end is whispering to the boss about me, saying the exact same thing that 6 months ago, the hired secret agent said to the corporate boss to get us busted. And so you've got all these different things.
I mean, it definitely teaches you to think outside of the box instead of the straight line way that most people go at things.
There's a saying I heard a long time ago. The more you see, the more you know. And the more you know, the more you can call. The more that you can see what's going to happen. Again, it's that pattern recognition. At least that's my thought.
Well, real life is such a routine that when unusual things hit you, it often leaves you in a state of stun or panic. And in game mechanics, we have ways of displaying that, but because almost everything that happens in the game is unusual and unexpected, it prepares you for the unusual to happen. Because of the way the subconscious brain works, you're more likely to respond in a positive crisis mode versus responding in a panic mode IRL.
Well, it's also the aspect of which thank you leads directly into our second point, resource rationing. Because this particular topic is resource rationing because it's time rationing. In the middle of a crisis, you don't have time to make decisions. You literally have to decide that fast what to do. But in the game, there's an earthquake. There's a crack that runs through the top of your house. And so there is a beam that begins to fall. Well, in game, you've got essentially as long as the DM gives you to decide what your character should do.
Once I was a nice, sweet, young, naive DM, and I gave people all the time they wanted to respond. Now there's a 10-second rule. You have 10 seconds to decide how to respond to what I've just given you.
Yes, well, you're mean.
I'm not mean. It's skill building and time saving. Time is your most valuable resource.
Now, back to the resource rationing and getting off your meanness. So, having to ration that time, having to marshal that resource, that helps you out. Unless you get that training when you have all the time in the world to be able to contemplate your choices and kind of sort of run through that, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then at least to me, and we've got all kinds of scientific, psychological stuff that we'll go into later, where it shows where that then bleeds over for when someone is actually in the crisis, they can actually breathe and actually move during the crisis instead of just shutting down. Instead of just watching that beam fall and smash them square in the face, they go, oh crap, a beam is falling, let me dive to the side.
Well, I mean, it's even more basic. I mean, you are right, but it is even more basic than that. Because, I mean, if you've never played D20 Modern, it's a 2-page character sheet because it is a tabletop role-playing game. And there are sections on here for money. There's sections on here for how many bullets are you carrying? What weapons are you carrying? You have to micromanage. Like, I make my players keep track of how many bullets they fire because I need to know if you ran out of bullets in the middle of a zombie horde.
On to number 3. Intel and infill. Clues pieced together, tail shaken, stealth drops, hunt smart, ghost silent.
This is the best part for a DM because this is the dropping the little clues and the breadcrumbs over from session to session and seeing if you have, I mean, we all have a note taker at the table, the person that keeps up with everything, but seeing if your note taker is going to pick up on what you've been dancing around them for weeks, or whether one of your other party members is going to have an aha moment because you just happened to say that this person was wearing the same shoes as somebody they met 12 sessions ago. I mean, it's really, this is a thing that gets missed in a lot of games because DMs want to rush to the big baddie of the month or the giant fight, and they don't take the time to craft in these little enigma puzzles, as it were. Like I said, it's that building a world that intrigues the imagination, that actually pulls the player's subconscious into things. I've had players call me before because 2 days after a game session, their subconscious finally connected 2 clues from 2 days ago, and they want to gripe at me because how dare I do that thing to them and not make it blatantly obvious what I was doing.
So you mean you're making them think?
Well,
You're making them use their brain and actually practice the process of deductive reasoning?
I mean, if they want to have fun, they could always cheat and just roll the dice.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't do it that way.
Which, now, that brings us to point number 4. One of the problems that people have with D20 Modern, and we'll go into detail on this later if I remember correctly, but it's the tech and the gadgets aspect. Now, in a lot of games, people like to say that the toys that you play with in the game prepare you for that world. Now, unfortunately, as I mentioned at the beginning, D20 Modern is a 20-year-old system. That said, there are lots of supplements that have been created with modern technology that you can integrate into the game to bring it up to the modern age.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, their point is halfway invalidated because if you are playing a smart hero who is a digital hacker, well, you're going to make yourself familiar with the tools of your trade. I mean, I have never met a player that hasn't fallen in love with the system and then ended up writing a 5-page backstory. That requires research. I mean, and that research, that means that they're digging into what's going on in the real world to apply it to a game, so they are learning and keeping up with the modern times along the way. Or you could also take it as a time capsule because it teaches people the way we thought before we had gadgets to answer all our problems.
Well, regressing it back, removing the tech, at that point, that would kind of
Well, I mean, it's like our teenagers that play at the family table. The D20 Modern book does not have an equipment entry for a smartphone, but our kids can't imagine a world where they don't have their smartphone at their beck and call.
Well, it does have an entry for a cell phone.
But we can agree that there is a difference between a cell phone in the 2000s when this book was created and the smartphone of today. A significant one.
Yes, but I feel like gaming wise, it wouldn't actually make that much of a difference.
Sure, it would. You can't pull out unless I allow you to have a smartphone, you can't pull out your phone and search the internet in under 30 seconds for the thing to solve your problem.
Completely agree. But if you're coming to the modern age, then you could just claim that the cell phone is a smartphone.
You could, but we're going to move right along to your next point.
Very well, very well. Never wanting to argue with me.
I'm not going to make you look dumb on your own show, sweetheart.
Love you too. Point 5 is pressure talks and street grid. Being able to essentially handle the rough and tumble. Being able to remain calm when normally you wouldn't.
This is very real because I cannot tell you the number of young players I've seen sit at my table when they get hit with something unexpected, they freeze up. Imaginary violence acts almost like true violence on their nervous system. I can give you an example. One of our teenage daughters, we were playing in a scene and she got slammed up against a wall by her throat by an NPC, and she completely locked up. Like, it took us 5 minutes to pull out of her, what is your reaction to this happening, because she just didn't know how to respond.
Because she had never even contemplated that possibility ever actually happening. And that's the thing, just like one of the previous points, the thought exercises, getting people to actually think and contemplate and develop their reasoning skills, that's where this kind of comes in from. Because as you're prepping these plans, as you're making these ideas, what you wind up inherently doing is prepping yourself for something else. You're playing in a zombie game, so you're having to keep track and ration what you've got. Well, in the real world, when a blackout happens, you're going to have to keep track of and ration what you got. And those two things, they correlate extremely well, as silly as that may sound. This one I talked about a little bit last week in the D&D episode. Number 6, steel nerves and pivot power, where your plans just simply fall apart. You've got to be calm. You've got to know that sometimes things just go wrong. You've got to be able to shift and not shut down. And for a lot of us, gamers, neurodivergent, what have you, that's important. And the more we can practice that in a safe manner, the better. And that's one of the things that all of these tabletop RPGs have got in common, is giving us the ability to practice these skills in this safe area, where we can develop these abilities, this risk assessment, and this ability to contemplate what if.
Well, I mean, let's be real. I have seen a young teenager get attacked in game, not in real life. And after several rounds of combat, he's down to 2 hit points. He is about to die and he knows it. And he gets up flips dice and starts screaming at everybody that this is bull crap. How could you do this to me? Because he had no ability to roll with the punches, to pivot, to still have fun, despite he overly internalized his character, and it starts to show. And that's one of the things that you learn as you continue to play these games, is to be in the moment but detached from the situation, to be able to roll with the punches as fate takes its temper out on you, aka chance rolls.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, and I I love this quote. Thank you, Jean-Luc Picard. But sometimes you can do nothing wrong and still lose.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an important lesson that we have to learn. That you can do everything to the best of your ability and it not be enough. Sometimes chance just says no. And when that one rolls up on that dice, or bad things just happen, because there have been instances. There was one game I was DMing where I wound up rolling, I think it was like 3 criticals in a row on the same PC.
Do not talk about why DM screens are necessary.
And that's the thing. Those moments where it's just something catastrophic happens, yeah, emotionally in that moment, you're going to be upset. You're going to be devastated, but you're going to be able to come back from that. You're going to be able to come back from that a whole lot easier than a breakup with a significant other, or the death of a loved one, or a whole bunch of other stuff that people have to deal with in the real world. And even though those two things you can't necessarily correlate the two, because one is actual events in a person's life and the other one is a role play game, it still applies. It still adds to that resilience to be able to accept what life throws at you.
Well, and I think that's because of the final thing that D20 Modern teaches. It's a skill that, when applied appropriately throughout your IRL life and the game world that you're building, changes everything. It makes true change possible. It makes pivots possible. It makes resilience possible.
And what would you say that this 7th trait is?
Learning to work together.
Right up your alley. I believe that might be building relationships.
Yes, sir. But no, I mean, like, you don't think about the fact that when you're sitting around that table, you've got, let's call it simple math. You've got 4 strangers that are pretending to be 4 strangers. And they have to come together both at the table and in the world that you're creating. And they're going to do one of 2 things. They're either going to form rivalries, or they're going to form partnerships. Because who is your natural partner at the table? The other living person, not the imaginary person in the DM's head.
Never the imaginary person in the DM's head. Let me reiterate that for any new gamers out there. Never the NPC in the DM's head. It's never as good as it should be. It's never as good as what you want it to be.
Well, I mean, and this is a game, and let's make a clarification here. D20 Modern has game masters, not dungeon masters, but I started playing D&D first, so whatever. But no, you never wanted to be the guy in the DM's head, because let's be real, the guy in the DM's head was named Bob until you asked to talk to him. He didn't have a white picket fence and a horrible backstory until the moment you decided to engage with him. And because you put your DM on the spot, they're going to make it traumatic. So have a good day.
What? No. They would never do that. Never mind.
Look, your DM is the ultimate improv actor. And if you do the job right, you don't make it the DM versus the players. You make it the DM plus the players versus the dice.
I don't like that though.
Why not?
But I've never liked the DM versus the players idea.
But that's the thing. A lot of games end in tragedy because they become the DM versus the players. That's why I've always had the philosophy of the game master really is God at the table. And not to bring a religious stance onto it, but as the player, you want the same relationship with the DM that a good Christian has with God.
While that is accurate,
I think it's a funny way to put it out there, not to alienate anybody, but I think it's a good illustration.
I don't know, part of me wants to say it's kind of blasphemous, but that's for a completely different. For a completely different show. That's for a completely different show.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Now, for me, all of this kind of builds down to that the DM, for me, is essentially the player's interface with the world.
That's a good way to look at it.
Because when I DM, I'm not playing it as this is my story, here's how things are going to go. My thing is, okay, here's the world, y'all are interacting with it. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, you come up to the door. You're gonna interact with the door. Now, I have no foreknowledge of this door. I don't care about this door. If they smash this door down, it's not gonna hurt my feelings or my pride as a DM, because at the end of the day, I don't know jack about this door. You're gonna smash the door. Okay, awesome. What kind of door is it? Let me roll some dice. Okay, it's an iron door. Okay, how thick is it? Let me roll some more dice. Oh, okay. And then on the spot, in the moment, I'm not invested at all. I'm just telling them what they're interacting with and what's happening. So when they get completely and utterly trounced, I can claim that I didn't do anything. I did not wipe the party.
Right,
I did not plan this.
You got to make it make sense. That's the main thing. Like, outrageous is outrageous and extreme chance is extreme chance, but it still has to make sense. For example, once upon a time, Havoc may have been sitting across the table from Lady Lionheart, and he may have irritated her quite badly during a series of drive checks, and he may have slammed on his brakes outside of an emergency room, and a random chance may have accidentally snapped the neck of a teenager sitting in the back of a car. That crap happens, but you make it make sense, because otherwise you just alienate the team against you.
I don't know. I still call BS on the dice rolls even all these years later. But we're not going to get into that. That's an argument for another marriage counseling session. So, moving on to our crisis cognition, it sharpens our decision making under fire. We move on to our science spotlight. D20 Modern turbocharges your crisis cognition. Resource crunches hone executive function for hacks, tales, and shootouts. What are some moments that your players' ops, smarts, bled into everyday wins?
Oh gosh, that's a hard question. So this shows up in little ways, and this isn't going to be typical for a lot of DMs, because let's be real, they're playing with adult players that are typically experienced in role play, if not the specific system. But from my experience, teaching young gamers to tabletop with this system, I have noticed that after consequences have bit them in the butt in the game, and we're talking like they did something or they acted it like they barged through a door without checking to see if it was locked or unlocked or listening for what might be on the other side, some consequence bites them in the butt. The most common example of this in D&D is they stride into the room, but they didn't look down at the floor and they fall into a pit of spikes. That stuff that really does happen in real life, and I've noticed that the more often the consequences bit them in the game, the less often they bite them in real life because they take a half second and pause and think their actions through more often since they have been playing.
Yes, agreed. And to put, I think, a little bit of a scientific point on it, there is actually the Heinrich and Worthington study in 2021, or rather the review of 13 previous studies, showed that tabletop RPGs spike problem solving and moral reasoning. D20 Modern's street stakes, the example, the drive/spot versus abstract spells, makes all of that a bit more sharper because what you're doing is on a real world basis. It allows you to essentially practice those real world scenarios of interacting with people. I mean, really and truly, because we all, anybody that's read any kind of anything on this knows that in therapy they'll take people and just have them like go through role plays to try and help them get used to the talking and using the words and hearing their own voice and just a whole bunch of other stuff that I don't actually understand because I haven't taken those college classes.
Well, you mentioned moral reasoning, and I think it's important that we point this one out a little bit. A lot of people go into these games thinking that they're going to play an evil character without actually conceptualizing what that means. And so they walk into a room, they grab somebody by the throat, they roll the dice, they stab them in the gut. And it's not until I describe in gory, graphic detail what is happening before their eyes that they start to second guess that action, that set of circumstances that led them where they are. Not always.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just fun and you're just being a goof tart or whatever. But you see these, and I've seen this with adult players too, where they play an evil character that slowly has a moral transition into a neutral character or a good character just because they personally can't conceive of doing what their character would supposedly do.
Yes. Generally, those are referred to as murder hobos.
I mean,
those are the same players that walk through town and go, "Oh, hey, yeah, let me magic missile that random farmer. Let me fireball the tavern.
but
Let me."
my point is because D20 Modern is so close descriptively to the world you walk in every day,
Mm-hmm.
those descriptions hit home a little harder, and they do actually help you form your moral compass by playing the game.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And to round that out, the 2024 Merrick study also showed that self-efficacy jumps post-sessions. And it's ideal for the urban what ifs like blackouts. You all, like we were talking about, that whole thought experiment.
It's tactics training.
Exactly. Going ahead and walking through it in your head and playing it out on the table makes it so that when that thing actually happens in real life, it's, oh, I've already been through this. I know what to do. I've already got my plan for what I would do in this scenario. And so it may.
And well, I mean, and in D20 Modern, let's be real, a lot of the scenarios that you're going to find yourself in, like corporate espionage, parasailing off the roof of the Nakatomi Towers or some insane crap that will happen in the game, is highly unlikely to happen in real life. However, there are a million micro actions that led to that moment that will happen, that you have trained yourself to respond to, such as you're driving to the Nakatomi Towers and the light suddenly changes, and so now you have to make a drive check to not blow through the intersection.
Mm-hmm. You have now contemplated what would happen if you come up to an intersection and the light changed suddenly.
Mm-hmm.
So, the next time you do that, you've got one additional time of having contemplated that, so you might be prepared for it a little bit more.
Exactly.
What do we say about the people who claim that it's depressing or that it's too close to home? Because we've got the common blocker. The people say that D20 Modern feels too real. The blackouts, the shootings, the corporate betrayal. That it's not escapism. It's just reliving the news. Why would I want to play something that stresses me out more? I get it. Fantasy dragons are fun. A zombie outbreak in your hometown mall hits different. Players burn out when the DM leans too hard into headlines and paranoia starts to creep in. The sessions turn a grimdark therapy that nobody asked for.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump in on this one before we get off in the weeds. So let's be very, very, very clear about something. The way that role-playing games play, it takes multiple sessions typically to get through a 24-hour period in the real world. So let's say we start a brand new game today and I splash it with all the headlines of everything that's going on in the news right now. All I'm doing is creating an alternate world. And the reason that I say that is because by session 2, your headlines are now a week out of date, maybe a month out of date. By the time you get to session 4 or 5, you're half a year out of step with what's going on IRL. So if they say it's too depressing, I say your DM isn't running it right. Because at the end of the day, if you're not having fun, you're going to learn the wrong lesson at the table.
Perhaps.
So, I apologize for jumping in. Please continue.
No. So, the question I have for you was, have you ever had players tap out because the modern setting felt too heavy? How did you pull it back? How did you calm those players down?
I have never had a player tap out because the setting was too heavy. My player, because of the way that I use the dice, they almost never blame me. It becomes fun and entertaining when something bad happens. The times that I've had players almost walk from the table has been when it was emotionally heavy, when it hit them in the feels or something, or they were in an emotional conflict with another player at the table. That's when we've struggled a few times. And there's really only one way to do it. Because if you bend to the player, you're going to find yourself always bending to the player. And as we know from the real world, that's just not how it works. Reality does not bend to our will. You have to give them a moment to step away, breathe, and process what's happened, even if that means they walk away for the rest of that session. But they always come back.
Hopefully.
I have never had someone not come back.
Because at the end of the day, when you're talking about that too real is the training. The controlled exposure builds our resilience. You face the fear at the table. You learn to pivot. You learn to handle the actual crisis calmer. You're able to dial it back and make it a little bit lighter with the Urban Arcana vibes and other things here and there. So you don't need to be quitting the game. You don't have to quit the game. You can just twist it back a little bit. Add a little bit of Urban Arcana to make it a little bit less real. Or if your DM is amenable, you can always shift it to essentially an alternate reality.
Okay, look, now here's a real example of something that happened at a game session recently where we did pull it back because some of the players were getting a little bit stressed out about something that was happening in their quarantine facility. And so Lord Havoc, he shows up on the scene and he starts to interact with the scene and what's going on. And that's when we threw Frank out. Now, this is a quarantine zone. So there are people that are being locked up here. And in all the chaos, one of the patients in this quarantine zone managed to slip free. And suffice it to say that the visual description that I gave of this person's attire was enough to break the tension in the entire room, and the rest of the scene was fun from that point on as they were trying to figure out what was Frank going to do next.
Okay, let's just be completely honest about this now. That entire thing was nothing more than an improv scene between Lady Lionheart and Havoc.
That's all gaming is improv with dice.
Right. But that's the whole thing. There was a door that was about to be opened. I made a call and whispered into her ear, and so she rolled some dice. And so when the door opened, okay, the dice said Frank was behind the door.
We also have to acknowledge that one of the players at the table did the no-no.
Oh yeah, somebody did say they were bored.
Yeah, you never say you're bored at the table because the DM will make you not bored real fast.
Yeah. But anyway, enough about... Yeah. So, bringing all of this full circle, we opened the door asking, what is D20 Modern wiring into your brain? We said games are training grounds, always have been, and D20 Modern is the modern equalizer. No dragons, just pistols. Beat up SUVs, double crosses, and a crew that has to hold together or die. We dug into the 7 core training, mastering tactical chaos and quick call, rationing every bullet and dollar, hunting intel and ghosting silence, commanding tech and rides, talking down pressure and enduring grit, forging steel nerves for when plans burn, and building that unbreakable squad core to be able to sync, lead, empathize, and judge, and be able to put teams together, be able to build those relationships. Real examples from the table show that it bleeds out. We have better budgeting, cooler heads in emergencies, stronger relationships, sharper pivots at work. We faced the honest blocker. It's too real. Shootings, blackouts, betrayal. It's not fun. It's stressful. Some groups quit when the headlines creep in. I've talked about players pulling back, keeping the edge without tipping into grimdark burnout. But the truth we landed on, that too real feeling, is the training in disguise. Safe, controlled exposure to modern chaos teaches you to pivot. It teaches you to be able to de-escalate and remain calm so that when real life hits, you're not starting from zero. You're not having to actually react to a crisis fresh and completely unexposed to it. You've been able to essentially erect a bit of mental armor to be able to take that traumatic blow, to be able to be prepared for it. And tonight, I feel like our discussion proved it. D20 Modern doesn't just entertain, it forges thoughtful operators, unbreakable grit, and human connection in the middle of a crisis. Your move is to keep feeding your mind junk that wires rage and isolation. Or choose games that make you better. sharper, tougher, more ready. That's the choice. Game alone or play with intent. Bottom line, games train. Non-stop. D20 Modern, Street Heroes from DICE, thoughtful ops, unbreakable grit, real human relationships. Being able to talk and connect with people on a better level. Being able to forge that leadership ability to be able to talk and convince and negotiate. Choose your games deliberately. Ditch the junk and make the choice. Before I completely close and shut us down for the night and turn off the open sign, is there anything else that you have?
Just keep gaming, guys. I mean, I've heard so many people say that gaming is just not for them. And all that means is they haven't found the system that speaks to them yet, the platform that was made almost for the way that their brain works. Just keep exploring and just keep gaming. Because one of the first things human beings do when we're children, we create games.
So, grab a core book, run a one-shot, feed your mind right. Next, we're going to be talking about World of Darkness. In my opinion, the beauty of a system that White Wolf created.
Depends on which edition you're talking about.
We'll get into that later. Thanks for your ear, and until next week, game with purpose, play with intent. Havoc LionHeart, out. Ow.
So how do you feel that went?
Hard sleeve shovel, sharp and clean. Hidden power in between. Top deck miracle crowd goes wild. Havoc smiles that know and smile. Bluff and counter, trick and trade. Every combo, every play. One last draw to seal your fate. He calls game, it's check and mate. Havoc is the master of gaming. Every table, every screen, every roll, from the dungeon to the final landing. He's the hand on the heart of the whole when the stakes go higher. He's blazing in Havoks Gaming Den, we know. Havoc is the master of gaming. Hit play, let the legend roll. Havoks Gaming Den. Call your friends. Press start, let it never end.